He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast View, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi, and Mississippi for that matter, a better place to live, work, and play. We've got a great show today. I'm going to be talking with Drake Bassett, who's the president and CEO of the Palmer House for Children, and we'll come to him in just a second. But before we do that, I want to bring Kyle into the conversation and say good morning to my partner in crime. How are you doing, buddy?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine. You know, of course, we had Stephen McCraney yesterday, and we talked with him. He's the one of the key folks at MEMA, and he talked about hurricane preparation and all that. We actually talked about 3 systems that were out there. One off the coast that's moving into Texas as we speak. Another one somewhere in the Cuba range. But then the other one, which we expected to hit some sort of area that maybe was not conducive to development, has already been named.
Not named yet. It's just disturbance number 2.
Man, it's going to be a nail-biter season, isn't it?
You know, I think I've been through so many of them, I don't really get excited until after they pass Cuba. So
I hear you. I think the point is, though, and this is what all the experts are saying, that it's going to be an active season for the Gulf, most likely. And the fact that we've had so many named storms already, and, you know, we're not even out of July yet. Let's hope it doesn't bear out.
You know, the thing you have to worry about is the number of storms that pass by our area and the close calls of do we leave, do we stay, and then we get gun shy and then we end up staying for another Katrina.
Boy, you're right. I mean, you know, that's what happened in New Orleans. That they had, I think it was Hurricane Dennis that went in, was supposed to go to Louisiana. Instead, it went into, I think, the Florida Panhandle. They did an evacuation, and then not long after that, Hurricane Katrina comes. They do another evacuation, and people don't get out. And that's probably one of the biggest concerns of the emergency management folks, is that people take each and every storm very seriously.
Yeah. That whole travel fatigue, hurricane fatigue, that's a real thing. Once you get a couple of close calls, then you're just like, see what happens. It's not going to hit us.
I know. It may be one of those seasons where we're dodging some. I'd rather dodge them than have them come directly for us. And as I said before, man, I mean, any community that has to deal with a hurricane aftermath in the midst of a pandemic, wow, what an unusual situation.
Yeah, that one's going to be pretty rough if we have to get into shelters, and that's a lot of people in confined spaces. How do you social distance there? Is there enough shelters to be able to do that?
Yeah, it's a tough one. You know, John McFarland at the Red Cross is thinking about it. Of course, Stephen McCraney and his team at MEMA are thinking about it. All the mayors are thinking about it. A lot to think about. Hey, with that said, though, I have a awesome show coming up on Friday, and you and I are already talking about this one and really looking forward to it. It's Josh Morganman. Do a search on it. Josh Morganman. He's with iCyclone. He's the top hurricane chaser in the world. He's got his own TV show. Just go do a search on iCyclone. What you're going to find is, if you know anything about tropical systems, if you follow them at all, you've heard of Josh. He was in Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas for Dorian, and he's been all over the world. So he actually has rented a house in Bay St. Louis because it's strategically located in the Gulf states, so he can go to Texas, or of course he can go down to Florida or stay for a hurricane. And so he's going to be joining us and giving us his impressions about Bay St. Louis and, you know, what got him into hurricane chasing and some of his incredible close calls over his history. He's not a risk. He's a risk taker for sure, but he really knows what he's doing. He knows where to go, how to stay safe. He ends up helping people in the communities where he goes. He ends up saving people in the communities he goes to. So that's going to be a lot of fun having a conversation with Josh, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't met him before. I'm going to go out on a limb and in the nicest way possible say he's some kind of special crazy to be able to chase storms like that.
Yeah, and the fact that he's willing to get into an airplane and go to Japan, or all over Mexico, wherever. I mean, and here's the thing: if it's a Category 5 coming, like with Michael on the Panhandle or Dorian, he positions himself so that the eye will pass over him. So you're right. That's a special kind of crazy, and
Yeah.
we'll have that conversation with him on Friday. So, hey, one other thing before we move on, after we talked with Glenn East and folks like Wayne Rodolphich, the superintendents, we've got Jay Smith, who's the superintendent of schools for Long Beach, coming up next Monday. Whether it be Briggs Hobson, the senator from Vicksburg, or Sean Tyndall, the commissioner of public safety, any long list of people that we've talked to, the thing that keeps coming back to me is how extraordinarily focused they are on helping the communities that they serve sort of get through this COVID situation. I mean, they're just facing it head on, and they're calm, and they're thoughtful, and they're good leaders. Man, we're really blessed to have this opportunity to share these amazing people with the people of coastal Mississippi, aren't we?
I think that just goes back to being prepared for just about any situation. You don't really know the exact extent of what you're going to face, like the pandemic, but you're prepared, and you have steps that you go through on a mental checklist, and then you just start checking them off. We need to take care of this. We need to take care of that. I mean, at the root of it, whether it's a hurricane, a flood, a pandemic, it's still basically the same thing. You take care of these people first, you take care of this next. And that's kind of where I think most of them are at. They're well prepared for life. It makes it easier to take care of this.
Well, and it gives leaders an opportunity to shine. And so we're going to talk to one of those leaders coming up now. It's Drake Bassett, who's the president and CEO of the Palmer House. But before we turn to Drake, I want to just share a couple of things with you. I was doing some research, and I wanted to think about kids and how important parents were, and how I wondered how many at-risk kids are there in the world, for that matter. And I ran across this thing written by Diane Lumens, and I want to share it with you now. Here's what she wrote. If I had my child to raise over again, I'd build self-esteem first and the house later. I'd finger paint more and point the finger less. I would do less correcting and more connecting. I'd take my eyes off my watch and watch with my eyes. I'd take more hikes and fly more kites. I'd stop playing serious and seriously play. I would run through more fields and gaze at more stars, and I'd do more hugging and less tugging. I thought about that when I read it. I thought, well, most parents who reflect on being a parent are constantly thinking about what they can do better. They understand that in many ways, the legacy they leave for the world will be their kids. Someone once said this: behind every young child who believes in himself is a parent who believed first. But then I wonder about this. If you have a child, but there is no parent in that child's life, then what happens? Brooke Randolph said this: children without families are the most vulnerable people in the world. The statistics are literally staggering. Around the world, over 200 million kids are at risk. The answer to that challenge is usually met one child at a time. And in Mississippi, one amazing solution is the Palmer House. Today, I'm going to be talking, as I mentioned, with Drake Bassett, who is the president and CEO of the Palmer House. Welcome to the show, Drake.
Thank you very much. Really happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and I think you're talking about really important stuff. So very happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So when I read what I read at the beginning of the show, how did it touch you?
It's funny. There were just different kind of mental lights going off because the numbers are real. In the state of Mississippi, for instance, we're probably looking at about anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 children that are displaced. And each one of those children, as you said, each child has probably had a disruption to that family description you were giving, those things that make us feel good when we picture them, a child at play, a child that's safe. And so when you have that many children who have had that disrupted, it gives you pause, and it says, hey, how could we make it possible, for a child that needs a place like that? And some of the things you touched on, that reflection of I'd spend more time with my child, I'd play more, I'd listen more. We're just so busy as parents, and we think we're doing all the right things. We're trying really, really hard. And the value of time and play, because all of us want to know, who do I belong to, and do I matter? And those things are so important.
So let's do this, Drake. We're coming to the end of the segment, but when we come back, we're going to spend the next 3 segments talking about the radiothon that SuperTalk is doing starting tomorrow. It's also in its 8th year. I'm going to tell you about why I believe this is really so important, and we'll tell the story of the Palmer House, a little bit about your background. I look forward to sharing you and your leadership and your organization to the people of coastal Mississippi. We'll be back after this break.
Whether you're a Rebel, a Bulldog, a Golden Eagle, or just a sports fan, SuperTalk Mississippi has got a podcast for you. For you. Sports Talk Mississippi, The Rebel Report, Thunder and Lightning, the SuperTalk Eagle Hour, and The Borky Show are all now available for you. And it's all free. Get them all on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for SuperTalk on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. What decisions are being made by state lawmakers, and how will they affect you, your family, and community? If you listen, you'll know. SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk app, and at supertalk.fm.
Hi, I'm Billy Kinder, host of Big Billy Kinder Outdoors. Here the show Saturdays at 1, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Turkeys, whitetail, Grenada Lake crappie, or Gulfport redfish. We enjoy it all, especially when you're in camp with us on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We know that we're asking Americans to do a lot right now. So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible to this virus.
A question I often get asked is, why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
Social distancing is really physical separation of people.
It's what we refer to when we ask people to stay at least 6 feet apart.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
We all have a role to play in preventing person-to-person spread of this disease, which can be deadly for vulnerable groups. For more information on how you can social distance, please go to Coronavirus.gov.
If a muckety muck wants you to hear what they gotta say, they come here first and sit down with Gallo and JT. This is ground zero for all Mississippi muckety mucks. SuperTalk Mississippi. Watch your favorite SuperTalk shows in HD. Just go to supertalktv.com. Ever wonder what goes on in the studio during the shows? Now you can watch what happens in HD. SuperTalk TV, streaming now on supertalktv.com. SuperTalk. Nobody keeps Mississippi informed like we do. With 12 stations covering all 82 counties. If it happens in your state, we're on top of it. The news, the weather, the sports, and the talk that's important to you. The issues that matter to you, your family, and your bank account. It's all right here. And when you're away from home, depend on the SuperTalk app and supertalk.fm to stay in the know. We're proud to serve our fellow Mississippians. SuperTalk Mississippi. Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We were having a Coast View session today with Drake Bassett, who's the president and CEO of the Palmer House for Children. You know, I wanted to tell you, Drake, one of the reasons why I decided to do this show, working with TeleSouth, the company that owns SuperTalk, was because Steve Davenport, who owns SuperTalk, and Kim Dillon, who's the president of TeleSouth, are so dedicated to building better communities. And when you think about their dedication to the Palmer House over the last 8 years, it really is important the way that they exhibit their leadership in the community. Talk to me about how important this radiothon is to you guys.
Well, I think you touched on it. I think Steve and Kim and we are so grateful for that relationship. We've been able to develop that. This will be our 8th radiothon. It feels like it was just yesterday we were doing it for the first time. And, you know, when you talk to, you know, all the folks who are involved in the project, you know, they like to tell the story when they first came to Palmer Home, which we originally had, you know, the original building was in Columbus, Mississippi. That's where the whole program started, but now it's in different parts of the state and other parts. But you know, when they first came, they just didn't know what to expect. You have this idea in your mind that it's going to be a Dickensian sort of environment, you know, and you're going to have, you know, sad children and this sorts of thing. And it's just the complete opposite. And I think it helped them fall in love with what we're doing, which is really child by child transforming lives. And so their partnership, I think, was strengthened by what we all feel when you see the opportunity to see a child that again may have come from a disrupted situation, and you think about what they have experienced and you think about all that's possible, then that gets exciting. And so we always have a great day together.
Yeah, so let's do this. We're gonna kind of build the entire framework for your organization, but let's start with the children. So the children that can be helped by the Palmer House fall into what kind of categories? Just kind of take us through where they come from, and do they have parents or not have parents, and what's their situation?
Yeah, so again, you know, when you think of the term orphan, which is almost outdated by really modern definition, you've got children who might be coming again from a situation where the family has struggled. And typically there's a series of events. You can see, you know, where poverty's at play, or where there are any kind of pressure points. When there are pressure points that are placed on a family, how people respond often dictates their outcome. And that can be a variety of things. We read the news every day. We see how people treat each other, and that's not always the best. We see that people resort to, you know, either drugs or alcohol, or can be any kind of complicated things but underneath all of that often are children. And so, you know, we've often maybe seen a television show where somebody's escorted away, and who's standing in the doorway? Well, it might be a brother and sister that are 7 and 5, or any number of things. So that kind of situation is not uncommon. And I think there needs to be a program that can step in there. Often you have grandparents. You'd be surprised. We have some 30,000 plus grandparents across the state of Mississippi raising the next generation. So when the parents step out of the picture, grandparents have to step in, or they choose to. And it's a great, you know, relationship. But that often brings a pressure point. And I've worked with many grandfather to say they simply can't do it anymore, either for financial reasons or health reasons, so where do these children go? And I think that's what we see. So they've often experienced emotional neglect, sometimes physical neglect or abuse, and of course, potentially sexual abuse. So these are children who, when we think of children and we think of all the things that we want to make real for a child, that may not be their reality. They may have experienced things that none of us have experienced, and yet they're still children. And so we want to go to work on creating environments that allow them to feel like they matter, feel like somebody cares, but we also want to put together a restorative environment, because they've lost some things, and we want to try and put that back and give them the best opportunity for the future.
I did a session with Steve Azar not too long ago, and I fell in love with the guy, and he and I have become fast friends, and we talk all the time. But he helped. Listen. When I was publisher of various newspapers, I was always focused on the subject of human trafficking because it concerned me. It concerned me just in general. It concerned me because of the kids that were involved. And of course, the more you look at it, the more you realize it's a very, very significant problem. But Steve wrote a song for a charity event called "The Sky Is Falling." If you haven't seen that video, you should watch it. It is an amazingly well done video. The song he wrote is an amazing song. I want it to become sort of the clearing call for the subject of human trafficking. But you do see kids that have been involved in human trafficking, don't you?
We do. And I think what we don't often realize is there's sort of a continuum. So a child coming out of a vulnerable situation, you think, well, they're just having, kind of a bad lot. Well, no, those are actually where the candidates, and I hate to use that term, but that's where the candidates come from that eventually find themselves in trafficking. When you do the research and you find out that children who were trafficked, if you back it up a little bit, sometimes they've come out of being in multiple homes by way of some foster program, or they have been on the street, or they've been left alone. And so up to that point, they may have only experienced, and that doesn't even sound right, only experienced maybe neglect. In other words, a home where there's no electricity or no running water. They're not sure where the next meal comes from, unpredictable adults in their life. That's an environment of neglect. And sometimes that can include abuse. Well, those are the children who are often the most vulnerable. Why? Because the trafficking program is a multi-billion-dollar industry and it's global. And just as we've talked about businesses before, when they get sophisticated and they get smart, then they deploy the best tactics for recruiting children for trafficking. And often what they play on is vulnerability. And vulnerability is because I don't matter to anybody. I don't have anywhere to eat. I don't have anywhere to sleep. I don't know where my next anything's going to come from. And so they've got a very sophisticated approach. That's why they're hanging out in bus, facilities. They're hanging out at airports. They're hanging out at different places, truck stops where kids are leaving an unsafe environment. They don't know where to go. And someone reaches out and says, "Hey, are you hungry? Would you like a meal? Would you like a place to stay?" And for several days or even weeks at a time, they will cultivate a relationship only to have that flip and move them into trafficking. And so I like to think of the work that we do, because we have encountered children who've been trafficked, but I think about the fact that when a child comes to us, I'm actually pretty excited that we're able to get them to a restorative environment, because we've just prevented possibly one or more children from moving off that next level of danger, which is trafficking.
One of the things I want to do in the next segment is what I want to talk about is what is the Palmer House? How does it work? What's the experience? What's your proprietary approach? We'll get into that in the next segment. In this segment, I sort of want to continue just to kind of lay the groundwork for the children and the mission. It is an overwhelming need, though. I wonder if someone in your position, you came from the corporate world. In fact, we connected on the fact that you were CEO of Claritas, and newspaper companies that I used to work for use that marketing software all the time. So it's a small world for sure. But you come from the corporate environment, you come to an organization, it's a faith-based organization. You wanted to have a way to sort of spiritually engage your corporate knowledge in a way that could help. And that's what you've done here. We can talk more about that. But it is, because you are into the data, it is an overwhelming situation. And I actually wonder, how does someone in your position look at it and say, gosh, there's so many more we could help. There's so many more we could help if we could expand our capabilities. Is that frustrating that you can't do it fast enough?
Yeah, it is, because, to your point, when you look at the data, it can crush you. You look at it and you think to yourself, wow, in the United States, there are some 400,000 children in the categories that we described. We can't quite quantify trafficking. You think, well, surely there's a way that if we just deployed all the resources. And it gets back to what you were talking about at the beginning of the show. It's one child at a time. And if you start to put processes in place, now here's where the business part comes into it, right? You say, well, let's look at this. Can we get great people? Can we use simpler processes? And can we get after certain kinds of results? then absolutely you can make a greater impact. But yes, I won't deny the fact that it's daunting. And when you do the data, you have to get excited about incremental wins. And you want to find, one story. And those stories can keep you motivated to say, all right, let's keep doing this. Let's keep doing this. And we've been able to see some growth. First year I was here, we worked with about 65 children. Last year, we worked with 270 children. So that kind of growth is that's where you begin to see, okay, maybe our footprint can get a little bigger and our influence can be a little greater. And that gets exciting.
When you compare that against the number of vulnerable kids in Mississippi, what's that number?
So the vulnerable children in Mississippi is around 4,000.
Yeah, 4,000. Okay.
So
you mentioned that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my belief that if we keep deploying some of these processes, the magic number in my head is 1,000 children. There's no reason.
Okay, so we'll go to the break, but let me say this one more time. Behind every young child who believes in himself is a parent who believed first. So what if there's no parent? What kind of system can be set up to give the child a good opportunity to become a complete contributing human being to society? We'll come back after this and tell you how it's all structured. See you after this break.
Get out of the house and over to Big Play today. 2 massive arcades, bowling, go-karts, 2 mini golf courses, a 2-story state-of-the-art laser tag arena, bumper cars, and right now get a $50 game card for only $25. Visit our station's Facebook and print on demand so you can play at Big Play Entertainment Center now. These deals won't last long, so make sure you get your half-off deal. Big Play Entertainment Center, Highway 90 Biloxi. Bowl, play, eat. Go to our station's Facebook to get your half-off deal now.
The Dean's List with Janice Dean.
A compassionate young man who became a dinner companion for a stranger makes today's Dean's List. Lisa Mealander and her family had been eating at the Eaton Park in Belle Vernon, Pennsylvania, when she noticed how her server was interacting with a senior patron. The server, Dylan Teetle, had dropped to one knee so he could give his full attention to the gentleman. Lisa wrote on Facebook, the man apologized for not hearing well, and he talked about how he lost his hearing during the war. He was 91 years old with many stories to tell, and Dylan patiently listened, giving him his full attention. He also helped the man figure out a meal from the menu before putting the order into the kitchen. Lisa tried to flag Dylan down so she could offer to pay for the man's meal. Dylan said someone else had already taken care of the check. Before leaving her table, Lisa snapped pictures of Dylan chatting with the senior and published them to Facebook, where they have been since shared thousands of times. Thank you, Dylan, for your kindness, and Lisa for sharing this story with all of us. Janice Dean, Fox News.
Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at SuperTalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk, Mississippi, covering the Bulldogs like no one else. Staying informed is a full-time job, even more so during an election year. That's why SuperTalk is here. With Fox News, News Mississippi, and the Super Talkers, you'll go inside the campaigns, and we'll separate what's real from what's not to bring you the latest information that matters. From now until you go into the voting booth on November 3rd, your election headquarters is Super Talk, Mississippi. Available on the Super Talk app and at supertalk.fm. From the Gallo Radio Show archives.
In the house, Mike Hurst.
When I started at the end of 2017, sadly, our office had gotten so low during the last administration. I think in FY16, we prosecuted 11 illegal immigration cases, 11, which is embarrassing. First year I was there, we had jumped almost 700% to 77 prosecutions. And Paul, that number I think is going to increase very much more this year. We are continuing to see illegal immigration impact crime around the state. I'll give you a perfect example. About a month ago, we prosecuted an illegal alien who had brought 9 kilos of heroin and 1 kilo of fentanyl through our state. Now, to give your listeners an idea of what 2.2 pounds of fentanyl will do, that will wipe out 1 million people, Paul. That'll wipe out 1/3 of our state.
This has been another Gallo Radio Show audio archive.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it, so do your part and stay home. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit social gatherings. If you need essential items like food and medicine, try using a delivery service. If you must leave your house for essential items, or if you want to take a walk for exercise, make sure to wear a cloth face covering. Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. Try not to touch frequently touched surfaces like light signals, street signs, or benches. And wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus, so stay home unless absolutely necessary. Visit Coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi and now on Amazon Alexa devices.
Hey, want to come work for the #1 radio group on the coast? TeleSouth Media has a great opportunity for an outside sales consultant. Get paid while having fun and work in the exciting, fast-paced world of radio. We have award-winning stations like 97.9 CPR Rocks, 105.9 The Monkey, G96.7, SuperTalk 103.1, and 103.5 The Possum. Take the first step towards a new and rewarding career. Submit your resume to Jesse at telesouth.com. That's JESSE at telesouth.com. TeleSouth Media is an equal employment opportunity employer.
He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. As I read before we went to break, behind every young child who believes in himself is a parent who believed first. So if you have a situation where a child is at risk, where there's really not there could be a parent in their life, but it could be the wrong kind of influence, of course. What is it that ultimately triggers the Palmer House to get involved? And then let's talk about the Palmer House and your unique approach.
Well, I think, as we said, children come from many different vulnerable situations, but once they come to us, every face, every story, every individual child is going to have a number of different factors that make up their life, just like there are factors that make up your life. We talked about business. We talked about where we've lived. We talk about our experiences. We talk about our parents, and we can point to that. And all of those things contribute to who we are. Well, when you work with vulnerable children, you realize that you open up that box, and it may not be as sunny as you would like for it to be. But we don't always know. I think of working with children like this when they come to us, because sometimes they literally will show up with nothing but, as the story goes, the clothes on their back. That's what they have. They've come out of a very difficult situation, and they come to us. Often they haven't eaten much. They may have never been to a church. Okay, they may be behind in school. There could be a number of emotional or physical factors that they've experienced, and so we don't really know. But what you were saying earlier about how important it is that there's a parent. Okay, well, what if the parent's gone? Well, we can't replace what they've lost, but what we can do is we can introduce an environment that puts pieces around them that begins to allow them to heal. And the things that are so important in our relationship with our own families include the safety that we feel. You know, why are some children just so happy and running around? Because they feel safe. They don't worry. And we remember being kids thinking, you know, I don't have anything to worry about. I just got to make sure I find my way home by 9 o'clock, you know, or whatever it is. I'm going to go ride my bike. I'm going to go play. I felt safe.
I read where one of the first things they get is a bike.
That's right. That's right.
Tell why that's important.
Well, I think it's important because children are children. They want to play. There's a great, we talked about different references. Ken Wilson has a great TEDx out there, and he's talking about education and thinking about education. And he's saying, maybe we got a little bit backwards. Maybe we ought to give children a little bit more time to play because they learn at different rates. And one of the reasons that we use play therapy to help children, or we use puppet therapy, or we use different kinds of therapy, is because they have to go back and sort of refuel on some of the play that they've lost. They're just children. They're not adults yet. And so we give them a bike. We let them run around. We let them get on the swing set. We let them just, because what you're doing is you're dialing down the noise of the chaos that they've come from. It's not normal for a 4-year-old child to see somebody shot. It's not normal for a 5-year-old boy to watch his parents beat each other to the point where somebody's got to go to a hospital. That's in their mind, and so their mind is disrupted, and there's a lot of noise in there. So the first thing we try to do at Palmer Home is calm down that noise, give them a sense of peace, and part of that's just hopping on a bike and riding down a gravel road.
Wow, that's so special. So continue to kind of paint the picture of how these families operate. I don't know if you call them families, but these units that you,
So we refer to them as house parents, and we basically have people who are, talented, but they're also mission-minded. They're there for that reason. I always say people don't come to Palmer Home by accident. You come because you want to serve. And of course, my job is to make sure that we get the right pieces in place, the right people. So we have counselors, we have educators, we have house parents, we have people around them, that they can trust. And that trust doesn't come automatic. I've seen children show up for the very first time, and when I was new to this, I used to think, oh, here, I'd put my hand out or I'd want to give a hug, and you realize, very quickly, they're not ready to just extend all this. I may be all jacked up on serving a mission, and they're thinking, who's this guy?
Yeah.
So you learn that you have to create an environment that feels safe and begins to build trust, and when you start to build that trust, that's when you can begin to introduce new things. That's when you can begin to say, hey, let's talk about education a little bit, or let's talk about some spiritual thing. But it's all about trust. And all of our relationships, the ones that feel good to us are the ones that we feel safe, the ones that we believe in. So our goal is to have that available when kids come out of maybe chaotic environments. And that happens on our campus, primarily in Hernando. And it's 150 acres, and it's a beautiful campus, and we have a lake, and we've got these homes where there might be 6 or 7 or 8 children in a home, and we've made sure that the mix is just right. And so they begin to live a life. They've got a bed, they've got a bedroom, they've got the bicycle we talked about. They can hang out and watch TV with other people that they can begin to feel safe and trust. And when you start to see over a few weeks or a few months, a child get comfortable, really believe. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, we had a child that just kept putting food in his pocket every night. And you think, why is he doing that? Doesn't he know that there's going to be food there tomorrow? Well, the answer is no. He doesn't know that because his experience wasn't like that. And so we just let him do it. We just let him do it for a while till he finally realized, okay, that's going to be there tomorrow. And those are the kind of things that touch you because you realize, wow, these kids have seen things and experienced things that you and I may never experience. But knowing that that's where they've come from, let's keep being consistent. Let's create this. We also eventually move on to foster care. We believe that after a child has calmed down and had the opportunity to get on track educationally, to experience and benefit from the counseling that they will need, to feel confident, we begin to match them up with a family that has been introduced to the child. They begin to have a relationship. We call them mentors. They begin to spend maybe a Saturday afternoon at a football game, or if we're going to have football this year, right? We are going to have football, right? But they begin to spend time together. Well, that builds that bond, that creates that safety. And then we see that outcomes are better when children move into a family, kind of a forever family. And we train that family, we equip that family, and we call all of this our whole child approach. A whole child approach says every piece of that child is important, and we're going to zero in on the pieces, whatever they are, wherever they're at, and we're going to work to restore all aspects, whatever it takes.
You actually, these families are certified foster homes. Talk about that.
Well, the certification process is really, really important because, You know, you and I, it's like my wife and I talk about it sometimes, and we say, hey, we would love to do this. And she says, yeah, but are we really qualified? And you say, well, of course you are. You run a children's home. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're equipped from an emotional standpoint or even a financial standpoint or even the different aspects of serving. But paying attention to the background, the experience that these people have, and what they can bring into this environment. So they're very special people to us who have come to us, and they have demonstrated that they have the proper balance. You imagine walking into a home tonight and you've got 8 children that you've never worked with before, and they've come from 8 different backgrounds, 8 different circumstances. You have to have the kind of temperament, and you have to have the kind of passion to roll with a lot of different scenarios and to be flexible. But the good news is there are people out there like that. We have them. And when children come to our homes and they live in our homes, they begin to experience that sort of consistency. Well, we do the same thing with the foster families that we preview. And so when we match it up, we're seeing great success because we've taken the time to coach and prepare the child for foster care, and we've taken the time to coach and prepare the family for foster care. And so that's where we see some of these success stories.
Tell me about the infants and mothers who are in prison.
It's a great story. You know, in 2014, I came across this organization. They reached out to us. We sort of reached out to them. They were working directly in the prison. Same question you asked earlier, where do these children go? So think about it. When a mother is arrested, and she may not even know she's a mother yet, she gets into jail, she discovers that she's expecting and that she's going to have a baby, and all of a sudden, all of that starts to overwhelm. Where does that child go? Well, they can decide to either give it back to a family, but it's possible that their family environment wasn't very stable to start with, and they are afraid of that. They are also left with, you can do that, or you can turn them over officially to the state. And when they deliver the child, they have about 48 hours to make that decision. So this ministry stepped in and, again, builds trust with women who are incarcerated to say, we will take care of your baby with a family that's trained and certified. We will bring that baby to see you. Often when incarcerated mothers have a child, they don't get to see their children very much. We make it a priority because of what you said earlier. That connection is so important, and we want to keep that connection. We've had families care for children while mothers are incarcerated for up to 3, 4, 5 years. But it's great to see when they come out, we all work together to bring that reunification and make it possible. It doesn't always happen, but when it can happen, what a great, great story.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about your staff. And it has to take an incredibly special staff to pull off a mission like this. They've got to care. It's like you said, they really have to be on a mission. I mean, there's really no other explanation than they're on a mission. They want to make a difference, and they know that it's one child at a time. This is Drake Bassett, who's the president and CEO of the Palmer House. And when we come back from the break, we'll finish up this Coast View session with a little bit of a plea to you about what you can do to help us. Okay, we'll be back after this break.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast View on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to SuperTalk.msGulfCoast.com.
Be sure to go by this station's website and check out the half-off deals. Audubon Zoo tickets for just $15. That's half price. $30 zoo tickets for just $15. Again, go to this station's website or Facebook. Look for the half-off deals logo to purchase yours now.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. We are with the fabulous Norbert Putnam as he played on so many hit records, you can't count them, and produced for some of the biggest acts ever. Norbert, Elvis.
And I want to tell you about Presley. He had 2 different voices. He would sit and talk to me in a very calm, low voice. And we were at Stack's one night, and we were having lunch. We always had lunch at midnight because he was nocturnal. We sat there and we have our sandwiches, and at 1 o'clock, he looked up. He said, "Hey, Put, come on, it's time for me to go beat Elvis." And he stood up, in a much deeper voice. He put on his macho voice. "Hey, fellas, it's 1 o'clock. Let's get cracking, okay?"
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, Amazon Alexa, and now on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
Let me know if you're en route.
49 Adams, the unconscious, Main Street and West Road, 49 Adams.
A lot of people are just worried about supplies.
Our supplies are getting pretty low, and that gives us great concern.
Aside from the PPE issues, they're really worried about if they are exposed and they have to be away from work for a certain amount of time.
We're going to need some money there. And so that's one way the public can support us as well, is keep sending money into that support fund.
What I really truly hope is that people don't forget that feeling right now of wanting to volunteer and give back to their community.
I hope this doesn't dramatically change the volunteer fire service.
Whether you're a Rebel, a Bulldog, a Golden Eagle, or just a sports fan, SuperTalk Mississippi has got a podcast for you. For you. Sports Talk Mississippi, The Rebel Report, Thunder and Lightning, the SuperTalk Eagle Hour, and The Borky Show are all now available for you. And it's all free. Get them all on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for SuperTalk on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Drake Bassett, who's the president and CEO of the Palmer House for Children, and we've just had a dynamic conversation about what this is all about. And it's one child at a time, and it really makes a difference, and it gives kids an opportunity to succeed in life, even if they don't start with sort of this initial family environment that every kid should have a right to, but not every kid has that, unfortunately. As I mentioned, over 200 million kids are at risk around the world and over 4,000 in Mississippi. So you need a Palmer House. And I'm struck, Drake, as I mentioned to you offline, I'm struck by your passion for the conversation, and that someone who'd been in sort of the throes of corporate life would move. You have 4 kids, you moved 2 of them. You would have moved them all, but 2 were already in college. But you moved your family to Mississippi, and you dedicated your life to making a difference in Mississippi. It's great to hear you talk about that, because I can feel your passion. You must have a staff that's unbelievable.
Well, the answer is yes. There's no other answer. They really are fantastic. And I think what we share is not always the same abilities, because they're much more talented than I am. So what we can share is passion. And, it's really exciting. The very first, I've got it on my wall here, the very first thing I believe in is great people. You just have to have great people. We already have a great mission. We have a great opportunity. Now we need great people to come to it. And so I have wonderful, wonderful leadership. I have people who have been living in Mississippi for a long time, who understand the need, and they appreciate the fact that if we can put some things together, and if we can work hard and work smart, then we can actually make a difference with those children. So I'm privileged to work with just fantastic people. We have people who go out and, of course, raise money, but we have people day in and day out who are working with our children. We have people who tell our story. We have, a great board who've been a part of this story for a long time. And so I get excited, because when everybody like that's working together, I just try to hang on and keep up. And that's what's fun.
You mentioned you just scooted right past it, but I went and looked at your board, and it's dynamic, it's diverse. They have all kinds of backgrounds. They're leaders in Mississippi, and I think even a few outside Mississippi. But you've built a really strong organization. So let's talk about, if someone is interested in helping the Palmer House, tell me how they can do that.
Well, there are always a lot of ways, and I encourage people to go just to learn about us to start with and to see those opportunities. You can go to our website, palmerhome.org, and you can spend some time there. We just recast the website, so it will explain opportunities for volunteering, opportunities for prayer, opportunities for donating, opportunities, particularly tomorrow with the radiothon going on. It's a great day to participate. You talked about Mississippi. And one of the reasons I came back down here, I grew up outside of Memphis and Cordova and have been down to Mississippi. That's where, you want to know where the catfish is, you got to come down to Mississippi. So, but knowing how giving people are here and how much people are willing to serve and sacrifice, the opportunity to me was let's go match, whatever I've got, my intentions, my desire, with these great people, we can do great things. So palmerhome.org, you can go to the website, you can donate tomorrow in the radiothon, but we're really happy to have people participate in lots of different ways.
So the way it's going to play out tomorrow, from 6 to 10, Paul Gallo is going to dedicate the show to the Palmer House. And then from 10 a.m. tomorrow morning to 1, JT show with Dave Hughes will be focused. And then from 1 to 3, Rebecca Turner and my friend Steve Azar will be on. And then from 3 to 6, and maybe even as far as 7, you have the SuperTalk Mississippi team sports team that will be doing their contribution to this. It's going to be a great day. All our social media is going to be focused around the Palmer House. So it'd be a good day if you go to Facebook. SuperTalk Mississippi or SuperTalk Gulf Coast Facebook page, you can get a lot of what you want to get to understand about Palmer House at those Facebook pages tomorrow. You can tune in. I would really encourage you to tune in and just listen. There will not be a Coast View show. There will be 100% wall to wall about the Palmer House tomorrow. I mean, it's a real radiothon. 8th year, as we pointed out. I heard JT interviewed the other day, and he was so hoping he could come back and be a part of this. I know he's making progress, but he's had some challenges along the way. But man, his heart and soul, everyone that I've talked to, their heart and soul is behind this organization. Yeah. That's awesome to be in a position like that, isn't it?
It just means the world to us. I just think it's such an encouragement to our staff. It's an encouragement to our children who say, who are all these people? and then, of course, across Mississippi, just knowing how much people pray for us. That's the best part about the Radiothon. It's a day where everybody in Mississippi seems to reach out, and we get to reach out to them and tell our stories. So we love it. It's a great day for us.
I wish we didn't have to do it in a COVID environment, but we're still going to do it. I mean, there's something about everyone being together. But how has life been for you in the last couple of minutes we have operating the home in the COVID environment?
Well, this is where it gets back to having great people. They've been very, very innovative. They've been very thoughtful, but they're also very responsible. We had to quarantine our campus. We've had to work. We've introduced foster care training and interest meetings virtually. And, we all have a mask handy as needed. So, but it's, like you, I think I would love for tomorrow. It's normally a day where we have a couple of hundred people all around us, but tomorrow will be a little more remote. And we all look forward, I think, to being able to get back to normal.
Yeah, that's great. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to spend time with you. I can't say it enough that the absence of of a parent in a child's life can create enormous challenges for that kid that they will never recover from unless you have organizations like the Palmer House who are willing to come forward and fill that void in the community. Because, as I said 3 times already, behind every young child who believes in himself is a parent who believes first. So in the absence of a parent, there has to be an organization like yours that can fill that gap and give a kid a real chance to not just be someone in life, but to feel loved and to feel like somebody cares for them. That's so important.
That's right.
So anyway, Drake Bassett, President and CEO of the Palmer House, thank you for spending time with me today. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the near future. Good luck with the telethon.
Thank you.
The radiothon. The radiothon.
It's great. Okay. Great to spend time with you. Thanks so much for your care and concern.
You bet, buddy. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, Alexa, open SuperTalk